This week, the Clarets travelled to Vicarage Road to face a returning Troy Deeney and a Watford side desperate to kickstart their season and pull themselves away from that relegation zone. It's Watford away, it's the No Nay Never podcast.
This is Liam Allen from the No Nay Never podcast. I'm joined by John Flynn from Sussex, a worthy Claret. John, welcome.
Thank you very much.
What did you think of that game overall?
Well, we were very well organised. You could say dour at times, rode our luck occasionally, but I think we wore them down, and then when the breaks came in the second half, we were pretty clinical.
Did it meet your expectations?
My expectation, I don't go with any expectation to watch Burnley. It's 100% hope. And today, well, it exceeded that, didn't it? Because a result away from home, I'll take a draw any day of the week.
Yeah. And I give you a wry smile when you give that answer. Just from a personal perspective, could you see any of the goals from where we were sat? Because I struggled to catch two of the scorers through that match.
No, fortunately, I'm probably half blind, but the guy next to me helped me out. We did just about see it, actually. One thing we did see, we managed to see what should have been a clear penalty to a referee who was standing about 10 yards away, and I was 100 yards away, and we couldn't understand why it wasn't instantly given, and it nearly led to a goal for them as well. It was just ridiculous.
It'll be a great talking point for this week's podcast. I'm sure Natalie will love all that. Anyway, thanks very much, Sean.
No problem, thank you.
Cheers. All the best.
Cheers.
So I'm joined by Dan, a Watford fan. Dan, good evening.
Good evening.
So what did you think of that overall?
Rubbish.
How does that represent your performance on the pitch throughout the course of the season so far?
A major use of a striker would be very helpful, but our performance is poor. There is no guts, no glory. But fair play to you guys. You did the job.
I have to say, Dan, when we heard that Troy Deeney was coming off the bench last week and becoming a little bit fitter, I think a few fans would admit that they were a little bit worried, but he didn't seem to be getting the service or the reception either today.
In the first half, we played with the ball going in the box. As soon as Deeney came on, there was no service. So you can't expect the striker to score goals if you don't get him service.
That's quite right. And one final point, what do you think of VAR and how did it impact the match on this occasion?
As an ex-referee, I hate VAR, but it's there, we've got to live with it.
Do you think it made the right decision today?
I haven't seen the VAR because that is the one thing I think is wrong with the way it works. Put it up on the screens. Let's see what they're looking at. Then you can make a proper decision about it. If not, everybody's going to go home none the wiser till match of the day.
Communication in the stadium is key, right?
Without a doubt. If you're going to bring something back, you've got to show the fans what you're bringing back. Putting it up there, checking VAR is no help to nobody. Show the incident again so everybody sees what they're seeing. At least then it gives everybody a satisfaction. Just remember, years ago, we used to go to the pub to talk about the game. All we ever do now is go and talk about VAR.
Absolutely.
We've lost it from the fans, I'm afraid, until it's sorted.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think it's about communication in the stadium. Let the fans that are paying the money to watch the match see what's going on and hear what's going on.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Dan, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
All the best.
Have a good one.
And you.
Hello and welcome to the No Nay Never podcast. We are back for another Jam-packed episode of discussion and a nice, uplifting, positive podcast following an absolutely cracking win at the weekend. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and joining me this week are regular panellists, Richard and Tom, both of whom were down at Watford at the weekend. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show.
Good evening, Natalie. How are you?
Yeah, we're grand, thanks. Tom, how are you doing?
Evening, yeah, not so bad, thank you. Much better after Saturday.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not been that happy hunting ground, I don't think, for the Clarets on the road. And I don't think I'd realised until the stats came in at the weekend that we haven't won away from home since April. Now, obviously, that always feels like a slightly false stat when you've got a 2-month summer gap in the middle. But still, that's quite a long time since we went. Now, obviously, our last away trip out was Sheffield United, which was painful to say the very least. So, Tom, starting with you, generally speaking, what do you think it was that was different at the weekend that managed to secure that all-important first away win of the season?
I think, especially when you compare it to Sheffield United, I think probably bluntly you'd say the first thing that was the difference was that Watford are nowhere near as good as Sheffield United. And the first half at Sheffield United, we were on the back foot. We didn't really create anything. And you'd have to say, really, it was the same first half on Saturday. We were on the back foot. Don't think we gave Foster anything to do in the first half. The difference was Watford were set up a lot more defensively than Sheffield United. They're playing 3 centre halves, but there's no overlapping. They were very deep. They were very flat. They were relying on everything going through Dale Afeu, and he's a good player, but he's not consistent and he's not a goal scorer. And I think he proved that with a couple of chances that he had, especially the one where Tarkowski slips, he takes it off him, he's through, and he's shot straight at Pope, and it's a good save, but he doesn't punish us there, and that's what Sheffield United did. So having weathered the storm in the first half, what you can say is at least we defended a lot better than we did against Sheffield United. We were a lot more solid. And then in the second half, we turned up. We took a chance when it came from the set piece. It wasn't defended as well as Sheffield United would defend a set piece, that's for sure. And I think that was really a massive blow to Watford's confidence. It reminded me a lot of the Southampton game first day of the season. Quite an even first half, or certainly a first half where we didn't look like we were going to go on and win 3-0. But once we nicked that goal, the heads dropped. Watford, they didn't look like they had any belief. Deeney came on and he didn't look fit. I don't think Pope had anything major to do after that. And we continued what we've done quite a lot this season, which has been ruthless with the chances that we've created. The finishing was really good. Goals came at the right times. And yeah, I think so. I think really the difference with the Sheffield United game was perhaps more than anything that when we weren't playing that well, when the chips were down a little bit, we dug in, we're a bit more solid, we're a bit more resolute, and that gives a platform to go on and get something from the game.
Yeah, Richard, one of the things that Tom mentioned there was obviously it did end up being a 3-0 game, and it was very different to the Sheffield United game. But that wasn't necessarily the case in the first half, and we were really out of sorts again in that first 45 minutes. When it got to half-time, were you worried at all, or did it still feel different to the Sheffield United game in that we were still in the game and you did feel like we would be able to claw something out of it? Or were you genuinely concerned at half-time?
Well, it's definitely better than Sheffield United because we wasn't 3-0 down. I was slightly concerned, but even though Watford had quite a lot of the ball, they didn't really create loads of chances. They got into wide positions, but on the whole, I thought we defended well. And the only real clear-cut chance that they had was when Tarky gave the ball away. Obviously, Delafeu hit his shot straight at Pope. So we didn't play well, but sometimes away from home, you've got to soak up that pressure. And I was reasonably content going into our time because when we did manage to create an attack, we did look dangerous. I've said it many times before on the podcast. Just my biggest bugbear is that in central midfield we're not able to keep hold of the ball and we give sloppy passes away. So I think that contributes to us being under pressure sometimes. But yeah, I was reasonably happy going in at 0-0. But I certainly didn't see that 3-0 scoreline coming at our time. And like Tom mentioned, once that first goal went in, they seemed to crumble, and that's a real worry for them.
Yeah, I can imagine it would do. And I think a lot of the players who've done their post-match interviews this week have noted the similarities between our mental state at this time last year when we'd only got 9 points on the board by Christmas, and they could see that same It's almost like a negative mental state around the ground and that defeatist attitude, and we certainly don't have that this season. Richard, one of the things as well that people were saying which maybe contributed to that slightly below par performance in the first half, in quite a few of the journalists have mentioned that it was a bad-tempered encounter, and certainly Burnley seemed to want to kill Dawson, if you, depending on what article you want to read. It didn't feel to me like it was that nasty or bad-tempered a game, certainly in the first half. And do you think that's just Burnley sort of being the victim of some quite just general negative press at the moment?
For one, I know people get quite aggravated by the negative press, but I love it. When we've got negative press, it means we're doing well. This time last season, there was none of this about Burnley getting under people's skins, or Burnley being too dirty, Burnley being too aggressive, because we were getting battered every game. So I welcome it. It means that we're doing well. I didn't think it was a dirty game. I've not seen the Dawson challenge back. Obviously, he went off injured, which was a massive blow for them. But it didn't look like it was a malicious tackle at all. It just looked like it was one of those things. And Gray was the only one that I seen actually put in a malicious elbow in. It was either on me or Taki. I can't remember which one it was, but he got a yellow card for that and possibly could have been a little bit lucky just only to get that. So I thought we played hard. I thought we played aggressive. Taki made a cynical foul when he brought Delafeu down and got a booking. But we wasn't dirty. I didn't think we was over aggressive. And yeah, I think just the whole game, as the game went on, we just got under Watford's skin more and more, the players, the fans. And they was the ones who started to lose the temper in the end, not us. And they just played right into our hands, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I'm very much in camp get upset by negative press, and I think there's two things. Don't get me wrong, Richard. I genuinely wish I could have that attitude where I laugh about it and I just think, oh, it means that we're doing great stuff. I think for me, I'm perhaps too overprotective of the club and the brand, but I think more importantly, I can see such an incredible progression in the club in the last, say, 5 years as to the team, from the team we were to the team we are now. And it just bothers me a lot that we don't seem to get the enough level of credit for what we're doing well, and it just seems to. And let's be realistic here. It's the journalists who haven't done their research. It's the journalists who don't care about Burnley Football Club being in the Premier League. They're a bit annoyed that they got given that gig this week. Now, oh God, I've got to cover Burnley, and you can see it yourself. You can see when you follow live commentary and up to date blogs. You can tell that that whoever's doing those blogs aren't watching the game, because the updates are very generic and very vanilla, and it grates on me that we don't get given the same level of respect. I don't know if that's the right word. Yeah, it is the right word. The same level of respect and the same positivity in the press that other clubs get. But Richard, you're quite right. It is also quite a joy to see us getting on people's nerves as much as we are. And Tom, one of the I guess this negativity around us, it led Statman Dave, and those of you who listen to previous show will know of Dave Roberts well. He launched the Cry-Arse Bingo on Saturday night after the game. And you can see where he's coming from with this. It just feels like every single time Burnley win, unless it's a newly promoted side, for example, or somebody like Sheffield United or even Norwich sometimes when they got beat, when we beat them, sorry. It just seems that we hear the same nonsense from the fans on Twitter. They all come on and we get cries of, oh, they're so boring. We might have got beat, but I'd hate it if I have to watch that rubbish every single week. And I hate Sean Dyche. And we're so predictable, we're so direct, we're time waste from the first minute. We've got dull, boring football. We've got niggly, dirty tactics, and we're everything that's wrong about football. And it's just, Tom, I can't quite make my mind up whether it's just the Jose Mourinho school of deflection away from your own bad performance, or whether there is a genuine feeling out there that people hate us.
Well, I think there is a kernel of truth to some of it. I mean, if you'd watched that first half on Saturday and you didn't know anything else about us, you wouldn't think we were a very good team. You certainly wouldn't think we were pushing for 6th in the league. I think it's quite notable. I think, as you mentioned, the majority of the teams that we play do like to have a bit of a whinge when we do turn them over. And I think one exception to that was West Ham the other week. I didn't see anything like as much from the West Ham fans. And you notice that actually in the West Ham game, that's probably as well as we played. It wasn't just a case of nicking goals from corners and scrapping and battling. It was a comprehensive performance. We could have won that 4-5-6-0 and they couldn't have complained. So maybe maybe there is an argument to say we didn't perform that well against Watford, and that's why there might be a little bit of frustration on their part. Do we time waste? Yeah, we do. I don't think we're quite as bad for it as is made out. But there have been games where, Tottenham away last season, the one where Eriksen scored in the 93rd minute, we were horrendous in that game in terms of time wasting. And Tottenham have got a bigger budget, and we're not expected to go there and play the way they want us to play in order to get the best result. But at the same time, if a team came to the turf and played like that against us, we'd all be gnashing about it, and justifiably so, because it's not great to watch from a neutral standpoint. It's frustrating to watch if you're a home fan whose team is not winning. Perhaps that's part of what feeds into it as well, though. Like Watford obviously got the first win of the season the other week. They'd have been expecting, right, we can kick on now. It's only Burnley at home. This is a winnable game. They've seen the first half display in which we have come out and been quite negative. I wouldn't say we've time wasted that much or slowed the game down that much, but we've not looked like scoring against them. And they'll be coming for the second half thinking we can kick on here and we can get another much needed 3 points. And then, in the second half, we've steamrolled them. So you can understand the frustration in the home end there. And obviously a lot of that came out not just on their own team, but on us as well. So I don't think that we're completely blameless. I don't think that we play a style of football that's great for the neutral to watch necessarily, but it doesn't bother me one bit. I had a fantastic day on Saturday. Really enjoyed the second half performance. Really enjoyed the 3 goals and the 3 points. We've sat 7th in the league at the minute, which is fantastic. I think one big positive for me in the criticism that we get for our style and that sort of thing as well is it means it's less likely that another team's going to come in for Sean Dyche. And you see a lot of there's a lot of rumours about Everton and West Ham. They're going to be changing managers soon. And when the name Dyche is mentioned, you'll see a lot of their fan base go, "Oh God, no thanks. We've had Sam Allardyce. We don't want Sean Dyche. It's the same sort of football." Maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. But if this kind of perceived negative opinion of our style, if this perceived negative opinion of our club and our manager means that we carry on in the vein that we're going and nobody's going to come in and disrupt it, then that's got to be a positive for me. So I'd side with Richard and I'd say, as the chant says, no one likes us, we don't care.
Indeed. No, it's interesting to hear you say that. Like I say, I think I'm perhaps a little too sensitive about Burnley, and I do take offence quite a lot, and I get very defensive. Richard, Tom's quite seamlessly moved on to the next thing I wanted to talk about, actually, about this, and this is this managerial merry-go-round I think that we're going to see. If you look at some of the teams in the Premier League at the moment, there is going to be an almighty shift around of managers in the next, between now and Christmas, and there's a lot of managers that are under a lot of pressure. Silva, we suspect, is going to be, I think it's going to either be Silva or Pellegrini that goes first, isn't it? And I'm not particularly worried about Dyche going to Everton. I think they've possibly burned their bridges there to start off with, but also secondly, as Tom rightly said, I can't imagine the fans would be too thrilled with the thought of Sean Dyche going to manage them. They've got huge designs. I think they'll go into Europe for a big name manager. But there are some talk about some managers who might be put in. Eddie Howe's always been touted around to be replacing one of those. Given that we're probably not worried about Everton, Richard, are there any teams, I guess, in the Premier League who you would be worried about? I'll tell you, I'll kick this off. I'm worried about the West Ham job. If Pellegrini goes, I think that is a side that could come in for Dyche, and I think he could go there. Do you A, agree, or B, is there any other teams that you would be worried about?
Can I just throw a question back on you, Natalie, and say, are you not worried about Everton because you don't think they'll come for him, or because you don't think Dyche will go there?
A bit of both, but I think heavily weighted towards I don't think Everton will come in for him. I'd say probably 80%. I don't think Everton would do that. I think they'll look for I think they'll look for somebody who's won trophies. I think if you've got aims to push into the top six, I think you're going to be looking for a manager who's got a proven track record either in Europe or in cup competitions, both of which, as we know, Dyche isn't particularly strong in. And I think they'll be looking for some big name signing that they can get some positivity back around the club. And I just don't think Dyche will do it. That said, if they came in for him, there's a small amount of me that just doesn't think he'd go after what happened last time.
I don't think Everton would come in for him, but I think he'd go to Everton if they did come into him. It pains me to say it.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
It pains me to say it because they're not my favourite club in the world, but Everton are a massive, massive club. Still, and I think that would be a really big draw for Dyche to take. And I think behind the scenes, he'd have more scope to do similar to what he does in Burnley, in terms of like he would be running the club. I'm the opposite. I just can't see the West Ham one. I just don't see why he would go there. There's a lot of issues behind the scenes. You've got Gordon Sullivan there who'll try and put the two pennies worth in, and I just don't think it's the type of job that Dyche would like to take. I just look at it and I think he's on a good contract at Burnley. He basically pretty much does what he wants. The club's in a good position. He's got a job for life. Why would he go and risk all that? Unless he just generally feels like he just wants a new challenge. So I don't see the West Ham one happening at all. I just think he would be really daft to take that one. And then the Everton job, I just don't think there's a common consensus from a lot of people who are close to me are big Everton fans, and they just don't want him for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They just don't want him. They look at it, and I think Everton fans are quite snobby when it comes to the football. They talk about this people club, how they want to play and all this, and I'm like, well, you've been awful for the last few years. Do you not just want a manager who's going to get the job done? And I think Dyche would be a brilliant manager at Everton with better players. He'd get them playing good football, and Everton fans, they like high intense aggressive football like they had under David Moyes, and when they can get Goodison Park rocking. So it's one of them. Let's just enjoy it while we've got it. Who not? Because
okay, let me throw this one. Let me throw this one back at you then, Richard. Let's not worry about those two. Let's say then that we don't think that Dyche will take West Ham, and we don't think that Everton will come in for him. Let me throw, because I'm going to chuck a couple more teams at Tom. So let me end with one with you. Let's assume that West Ham come in and successfully take Eddie Howe from Bournemouth. Would Bournemouth come in for Dyche, or would Dyche go to Bournemouth?
I just think no to both again. I don't think Bournemouth are any better than what we are now. And the way Bournemouth play down there, they like them or love them, Bournemouth do play some nice football. I just can't see their fans, after having Howe, what their fans have said about Burnley, taking to Dyche at all. I really don't see that. I think that would to take West Ham is a big club, but I don't think it's right behind the scenes for Dyche. But to me, Bournemouth makes even more or even less sense than what the West Ham job does.
Good. That's a good answer. I like that. Okay, Tom, coming to you. There's two other clubs who are probably in danger of losing their managers at the moment. Southampton are really struggling. They are rooted to second from bottom. They've only got 1 point more than Watford have, and they could easily. Well, Southampton fans are already starting to say that they want rid of their manager. So, Southampton, do they come in for Dyche, and does Dyche go to Southampton?
I think Southampton would absolutely love to have him. I think if they thought there was a possibility, then they'd be all over it. But I don't think there's any realistic chance of him going to Southampton. I think what a lot of our fans talk about when they worry about Dyche leaving is the fact that he still lives in Northamptonshire, and he commutes up here. And I know sometimes people have said, "Oh, what if the Leicester job came up, or the Villa job, or something like that? It's a lot closer to his home." Obviously, that's not a consideration with Southampton. The other thing is with them, obviously for this season, they're miles below us. I don't think they're gonna claw that gap back. I think we'll be finishing comfortably above them. So you're risking a stable Premier League job for the chance that you might be in the Championship or out of work at the end of the season. I don't think that's a risk that is worth him taking at this point. And then long term, what are the prospects for Southampton? A few years ago, they had a really good model. They were buying players, improving them, selling them on for massive profits, and that seems to have dried up now. Hasenhüttl came in with a massive reputation. He kept them up last year. He must have been expecting to be backed in the summer. They bought him a new winger. They didn't buy him a centre half. They didn't buy him a goalie. And look how bad they are. They're losing 9-0 at home. So unless he had a massive amount of money to spend to really overhaul that squad in the summer, I don't think the long-term prospects are particularly good there either. So I think Southampton is one of a lot of clubs that you look at in the bottom 2/3 of the Premier League. Say how many clubs are there who have the potential to really kick on and get in front of the top six. Obviously there was Leicester, and they're proving that this year. Maybe West Ham, maybe Everton, but realistically, what are Southampton going to do? The best they could probably do is 7th in the league, and he knows he can do that with us. So I don't see, outside of West Ham and Everton, I don't see anyone really credible that he might want to go to for a long-term prospect at the minute.
Yeah. Richard, you're nudging us. Do you want to come in on this point?
So, just the only thing I'm going to say, and this is the last kind of thing that I will say about this the managerial situation with Dyche, is that the board have got to really start backing him now. There's been too many transfer windows of, not signing players to improve the starting 11. Again, for me, this is another chance in January, all the summer coming. We're not going to go down. I think we're going to have a really good mid-table finish. We might even get as high as an 8th or 9th, maybe even 7th, who knows. We didn't back him when we come into Europe, and there was a lot of noise coming out there about Dyche going tight budgets, tight this, tight that. When the team got worse, we really could have gone down last season. It's about time now, and I'm not saying go out and spend 50 million on a player and play 200 grand a week, but go and sign players to improve the starting 11. For me, we're 3 players. We're a right back, another central midfielder, and a winger away from being a really, really, really top Premier League side. Like, not a top 6, but someone who can be competing top half regularly each season. So that's the only thing for me. I'm more concerned about not about other clubs, but about Dyche just getting generally just fed up of having a shoestring budget and the board just restricting him. And I know Dyche wants a specific player, but he said before, if there was a chest here, I'd go and spend it. So the board's got to start backing him a little bit more now, January moving forwards.
Here. What a blooming good summary, Richard. You're absolutely right. We got derailed a little bit then, worrying about obviously the managerial merry-go-round. But you're quite right. It's not necessarily teams coming in for us. We've got to keep what we've got happy. And if what we suspect is the case, and that some of these top jobs are going to overlook Dyche at the moment because of his perceived negative play or the dull, boring football he's supposed to play, then we should take advantage of that and start backing him on the basis that we should be able to keep him for the next couple of years. Tom, Richard's already mentioned there some of his shopping lists for January. One of the things I wanted just to touch on before we move away from that first half and onto the second half, coming back to the game at the weekend, was whether there was anybody else in the starting back lineup in terms of defence that you want to replace or get back up for. For me, I think we've displayed a tendency for some defensive frailties at times. I thought Ben Mee at the weekend was absolutely outstanding. He was just a rock. But then on the flip side, I thought Tarky had a very up and down game. There were things that he did that were phenomenally good and would surely take the eye of a bigger side than we are, a top 6 side even. If you're looking at Michael Keane, if Michael Keane can get a big money move to Everton, Tarkowski must be able to get a move as well. Richard's already mentioned it, the right back position starting to look quite soft. But then on the flip side, Pope I thought was spectacular the weekend, and really for the first time this season I thought he really owned his area and really owned the performance. So I guess, Tom, do you share those concerns defensively, or do you think we're all right?
I think what we've got is more than good enough for a decent league finish this season. Long term, I think right back is the position we're going to have to look at. I think we can probably upgrade there, especially with one of the two being Bartley 34, 35 now, so she's not a long-term option. I like Leighton, but I think, if we could go out and spend 10, 15 million pound, we could get an upgrade for him. He'd be a handy backup. He'd be, I don't think he's a terrible player by any means, but that to me is, in our whole starting lineup at the minute, is the most obvious place to upgrade. I think if we go out and spend 10, 15 million, we're not going to get a better centre half than Tarkowski or me. We're not going to get a better left back than Taylor. We're not going to get a better keeper than Pope. So for me, that's where I'd be looking to upgrade in the summer. But I'm not. I don't think it's something that needs desperate attention. I'm more than happy with the squad we've got at the back at the minute.
Good. That sounds great. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of this depends on whether or not there is a big club sniffing around for Tarkowski in January, albeit I can't see us selling any big player in halfway through the season. I think we'd hold out until the summer. Okay, well, let's move on to that second half then, because this is where all the magic happened. I believe we rallied the troops and we pulled a second half performance out that saw us crush Watford in the end and come away with 3 goals. And Richard, it was our target men again, the main boys, Wood and Barnes, who both got on the score sheet. Starting with Wood's goal, again, well, in fact, both 2 of the 3 goals were from set pieces again, but Wood again came from a sublime corner from young McNeil again.
Yeah, our set pieces, especially our corners in recent weeks, have been superb, including the West Ham game. I think that's 4 goals from set pieces now in the last 2 games, and depending on which side it is, them in-swinging deliveries by Westwood and McNeil are causing defences real problems, and especially goalkeepers like that Roberto, who's was really poor. I think Foster's a very good goalkeeper, but he's not one who commands his box, so he really managed to pin him down. And going back to Wood, it was just a really good predatory finish. Wrapped his foot around it and he hit the target. At the start of the season, let's be honest, Wood was quite poor, and then since he got his first goal, he's been probably one of our real key players, and we really missed him when he was out of the team. And I thought the line superbly on Saturday, and I think he was only offside once as well, which is a new record for him. And he's just improving all the time, and he's turning into a real top quality striker. Barnes still has his moments where he frustrates me, where he's more bothered about arguing with people or flinging himself to the ground instead of just concentrating on his own game. But I think with Wood up front, he really is proving to be a very, very good player, and long may it continue, because with him and Barnes up front, we are a massive goal threat.
Yeah, we really are. The physicality that they bring to that forward line is just. But they're quick as well. They're not just strong, and they don't just hold the line very well. They are very, very quick, and they can run onto balls when you push it forward to them. I think the thing that impressed me about Wood's goal particularly is his reactions. Like you say, the angle his body was at and the hook around it to sort of like push it almost backwards into the back of the net. I didn't expect him of that size and to be as sharp as he was mentally and physically to be able to react that way. Tom, the second one was his strike partner, Ashley Barnes. We had a bit of a VAR incident, but this time it went in our favour. Now, how did you react at the ground? Did you think it was a penalty straight away? Were you not sure? And since you've watched it back, what are your thoughts on the penalty?
Yeah, when I initially saw it, it looked like a nailed-on penalty to me. It wasn't a surprise to see Paul Tierney waving it away. Probably all remember the one at Huddersfield a couple of years ago that was a similarly nailed-on penalty. Thankfully, there was someone there to take it out of the ref's hands this time. Obviously, they went down the other end. They're attacking. It would have been good if they'd scored, wouldn't it? And then it just had the goal and pulled it back.
Can I just double check? That would have happened, wouldn't it? I am right. I'm not being really dim when I'm talking about this, because when I was looking at it, people were saying during the commentary, "Oh my God, what would have happened if they'd have scored?" That if VAR rules that it is a penalty, the goal that they score gets disallowed and it gets reversed, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that would have been good. The icing on the cake. But yeah, so they're setting up to take the corner.
Can you imagine?
And it comes up on the screen, the checking penalty, and it was a little bit kind of because the ball had come in the box before and been cleared, and Deeney had hit the ball into Bardsley. Bardsley went down, sort of holding his face, and for a split second, you sort of think, "Oh God, what if they're checking for a handball?" But it really looked looked blatant from where I was in the away end. I don't know if it was the same for everybody else, but it really looked like he'd caught Barnes. And then it comes up and the woman said over the tannoy, VAR checking penalty. And I find that unless they really think that there's going to change the decision, they don't always start coming over the tannoy. So at that point, I start to get a little bit hopeful. And then obviously he does the screen sign and we're going down the other end again. So yeah, brilliant. And having seen it back as well, I just can't work out how he doesn't give that in normal time. It's quite similar to the one, I think it was Mane got it for Liverpool against Tottenham a few weeks ago. The defender's there. He's gone to swing a leg at it and Barnes has just been clever. He's just nicked there. He's just got there ahead of the defender. I don't think Barnes is running onto that the intention to trap it and turn and shoot. I think he's running on there to think, if I get a touch on the ball, this bloke's going to give me a boot in the shin, and that's exactly what happened. And it's just a nailed-on penalty. As I say, I can't believe it wasn't given first time, but thankfully we've got the technology to step in, and on this occasion it's benefited us, and that's how it should be working really. If the referees are missing clear and obvious things like that, and it's stepping in and making the right decision, like I said, I don't think you'll get any Watford fans who'd complain about that decision. So when that's the case, then that's it, working as it should be.
Yeah, that's true. Well, speaking of that technology, Richard, what the big emphasis coming into this weekend's game, following the Premier League meeting and the review of how VAR is working so far, there was a huge push on making it a better experience for the fans in the ground and to just make things clearer and quicker. Did you feel that there was a change? Did you feel like it was maybe slicker, or did you, Tom's already alluded to this, that you could tell what was going on, but did it feel better when you were living through it?
It didn't take us long, but is that just purely because it was just such a blatant penalty that you had to look at it a couple of times and it was just an easy decision to make? Listen, it worked really well for us on Saturday. I don't know how Paul Tierney didn't give it at the time, because like Tom was saying, from where we were sat, it just looked an absolute stone waller. So for me, yeah, it worked for us on Saturday, but I still don't like it. I'd just rather just let the game play as it is, and it is kind of, for me, it is just ruining that unpredictability and that pure excitement. You get in football, and I still didn't celebrate the first goal as passionately and wildly as I would do pre-VAR. So I know we're going off topic here, but yeah, it was quicker. But does that mean VAR is going to be slicker in the future? I'm not sure, because to me it was just such an obvious penalty. You didn't need a long time to look at it to make the decision.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. I did joke about this when I was on Twitter actually, and I was listening to the commentary at the weekend. It's even stopped me tweeting as celebration as much as it was before, and I know that this isn't the same as being in the ground, but once the goal went in, I didn't tweet straight away like my usual, yes, get in, oh my god, this is amazing, because I was like, well, I'm just going to wait for a VAR review just to confirm that we have actually scored. And so I can see the point. It is starting to, well, that was the concern, wasn't it? It's starting to remove the spontaneity of the emotions that are attached to the game, and it's supposed to be an emotive game. It's supposed to be one that we absolutely love. Let's see. The drive at the moment seems to be that we want technical excellence, and that seems to be superseding everything else. So who knows where this is going to go. Richard, sticking with you then, an unlikely target man for the third goal. I thought Tarky did terrific for his third goal. I thought his first shot was great, and I thought his second, the rebound shot that put it in the back of the net, was really, really good. I was absolutely furious at one. If you watch, I'm sure it's the Sky Sports one. If you watch back some of the highlights, whoever the commentator is on the third goal, it is Sky, says, and Tarky bundles it into the back of the net. I'm like, excuse me, what? That suggests to me that somebody's bounced off his ear, nose, elbow, and gone in, and he didn't really know much about it, or even sort of like bundled it over the line. It was a very well-placed goal, I think. I think that commentator's doing Tarky a bit of a disservice.
Yeah, possibly. I think you are very precious, Natalie, with the vocabulary that people use. I think you do take it to
There's
a bit too much. I'm not bothered how he describes it as long as it goes in.
I can't help it.
Yeah, like I said, free kick, back post. I think at that point Watford's edge just completely dropped. It was awful defending, and I fancy myself to have scored on that one, to be honest. But yeah, it was a good save by Foster, and the defending was that bad. He actually had two unmarked shots in the penalty area, never mind a header. But yeah, it's great to see your centre half scoring. I think Ben Mee should score more goals, considering the quality of our delivery and how good of a header he is on the ball. But it was just a really nice, way to wrap the game up, because still 5 minutes or so are left. If they get one back, it makes it a little bit nervy. So, you could really enjoy the last few minutes of the game. And after losing 3-0 away from home against Sheffield United, I was really glad in the next away game to kind of reverse that scoreline. And it's all really good for our goal difference as well. So yeah, good ball. Nice finish. Absolutely rocketed it into the net. Van Basten-esque from Tarkowski, and a really nice way to end the game.
That's the headline that I was looking for. That none of this bundled it into the back of the net. I like it. Richard's going to be keeping me on my toes for the rest of the week. Every time I complain about a news report now, we'll be like, Natalie, shh. Tom, finishing off that second half display then, there was a quick point that you wanted to mention about. You were a bit disappointed with Jay at one point. Did you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, actually, before we go on to that, I might be worth just mentioning the shot that he had that led to the, I think it was the corner for the penalty. He just nipped in front of the defender, hooked a lovely shot over Foster. Really unlucky that it came back off the bar. And I think that was more than Watford created in the whole game, just that one shot. So that a bit of praise for that. But yeah, there was a point in the second half. I think it was on where 2-0 up. He's taking the ball down to the left corner. Defender comes across him, gets an arm on his shoulder, but he went down in a heap, Rodriguez, and it looked a blatant dive from where I was. It's not had much of a bearing on the outcome. It wouldn't have been a penalty or anything like that. So I've not really seen the incident back or seen it mentioned, but I just thought it was quite interesting, given the crusade against diving that we get so much from Dyche, that it didn't really get any attention in the post-match. Hopefully it's a one-off. Hopefully Dyche will just have a quiet word in his ear and we won't see it again. But it was a bit disappointing for me.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one, that one, just on the basis that, number one, I'm not sure why Jay thought he was going to get away from that, unless he thought he was going to be a lot more discreet than he actually ended up being. But obviously, like you say, just given the warnings, and apparently other Premier League managers have warned Dyche to stop his crusades because he's getting himself a bad reputation. I'm quite surprised that nobody else picked up on it and started to give him a bit of rubbish for it. But like you say, let's try not to worry about that. We'll protect young Dyche and put him in a bubble and let him have his crusades by himself. So before we move on, just to think about the next few games, then Richard, man of the match, please.
There was a lot of candidates. For me, was outstanding at the central defence. I thought Taylor was brilliant again. He's been outstanding since he come into the team. But I've just got to give it to Pope. I thought he made two really good saves in the first half, one from the one-on-one and then one from the free kick. And I'm just mainly giving it for just how he commanded his area. The amount of times when we were winning 1-0, the crosses were coming into the box, he came out and collected them really cleanly. And it just takes all the pressure off your defence. And just, and with his England debut keeping a clean sheet, I'm going to go for Pope.
Excellent. Tom, man of the match from you?
Yeah, mine I've not seen mentioned much actually, but I actually, I'd probably say second place for me. I thought he had a really solid game, but for me it was Phil Bardsley, especially in the first half. I just thought he didn't make a wrong decision. He was solid, and he really the flow of the game was really dictated a lot by him. For saying he's a right back, I thought he knew when to kill it, he knew when to put a foot in, and he knew when to throw himself at it. I thought he was really, really good. I was really impressed there. I've not seen him get mentioned that much. I suppose he didn't do anything spectacular, but I thought he was the most solid of the back four, especially when you contrast it to some of the slips that we got from Tarkowski and the like in the first half, and the cards that they picked up as well, which were a little bit needless. So, yeah, Phil Bardsley for me.
Yeah, interesting. I've not seen much praise for Bardsley from this game, so I like the fact you're giving it to him. I am going to go with you two silver medalists. Ben Mee was definitely the man of the hour. I thought he was solid. I thought he covered for Tarkowski well. And I also just thought he was strong. I thought he he allowed Pope to be confident and command his box, and he relaxed off a bit and just let Pope spread his wings a little bit. So I'm going for Ben Mee.
And I'm joined by Graham from Dublin, who's a staunch Claret. How are you doing, Graham? All right?
Very good, thank you,
Yeah. So the team news is out. We know about what's been going on all around us in the West Ham and Tottenham game. What's your opinion of the game against Watford, what's going to happen, and the current position that we're in?
Well, I thought when I saw the team, I wasn't surprised that it was the same team, because it was a good performance against West Ham. And Sean we know how loyal he is to his players, so he wasn't going to make many changes. So that came as no surprise. I think some of the Claret supporters get carried away sometimes, thinking that these are games that we can win handy. I'm a little bit more pessimistic, and I would be happy with a point. I think any away point in the Premiership is a good point, even if it's against the bottom team.
I would agree with you there. In fact, my Super Six has been, I think I'd give us 2-2, but I'm not sure that Watford are going to score 2, so I think we'll probably only score 1 anyway. So,
yeah, well, I'd settle for a 1-1, yeah.
And what's your thoughts on the season so far? Do you think we're about on a par with where I should be?
I think we are. I think we're always, once again, I think a lot of Claret supporters get sick of people saying we're punching above our weight, but the fact is we do punch above our weight. I still think we have a lot of good, honest-to-goodness championship stroke, maybe bottom of the Premiership team players, and I think the gaffer does an amazing job in getting the best out of them week in, week out.
So overall, what's your opinion? What's your prediction for the season?
Well, my prediction would be that we would finish, I would hope maybe finish around top 14, I would say. I don't see us challenging for Europe. I don't think we've got quite the squad to do that. I think we've too many off days, particularly away from home. I think we can be one-dimensional in a lot of games, as in the Sheffield United game, where we just play long diagonals. I think if anything happens Chris Wood, I think we could be in trouble. But I'm hopeful that we have a squad good enough to keep us out of the relegation zone.
Thanks very much, Graham. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome.
And I'm really, really pleased to be joined by my new friend Helga, who is from
Norway, Bergen.
And Helga, I'm really intrigued. Tell me, what is your connection with Burnley from a team, and why you're here today?
In 1958, boys my age were having an English team to support. My older brother supported Arsenal, my cousin supported Spurs, so it was natural for me to choose Burnley.
I can see that, absolutely, yes. Absolutely wonderful. I think it's fantastic that you're here today. So tell me, since that time, what is the general frequency of coming to the UK to watch Burnley games?
In 1962, I visited a family in Stoke, and they were quite wealthy, and they asked me, where do you want to go? And I said very timidly, Burnley. And my hostess said, whatever for, it's an ugly little town. So I never got there.
Controversial.
But my first visit was in 2010, late Premier League season.
Yes.
Very miserable 2 games against Stoke and Wolves.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that, yeah.
But I did come back next season in September, October. So 1 draw and 1 win. But I think it was 4-0 against Hull in 2010. Yeah. But then my partner became ill, so I couldn't come for 2 years. But when he died, I started coming back. So I think it must be the season 2013-14, I got a half-season ticket. And since then, I've had a season ticket.
I think that's a lovely story. So, tell me, Helga, we've seen the team news. We know where Burnley are in the league. And what is your First of all, prediction for today's game and prediction for the season.
I hope for a win. Watford hasn't had an impressive season. Burnley played very well last game, but that's 2 weeks ago. I hope for a win. I don't predict more than a draw.
And for the season?
For the season, we are not relegated.
And that will do me perfectly.
Yeah, but we will not get into Europe.
But that will also do me perfectly, because I think that made us struggle when we did get into Europe.
But it was great to go to Aberdeen and Piraeus.
I'm very pleased to hear that you did follow the team there. And I just feel it's a shame that I didn't see you there, because we were there at each of them games as well. Helga, always a pleasure, never a chore. Thank you for joining us on the No Nay Never podcast.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to have a change of personnel next game, and this is something that doesn't happen that often at Turf Moor. It's usually an unforced change from a resulting of an injury or a suspension, and it is indeed our first suspension of the season. Ashley Westwood picked up his 5th yellow card at Watford at the weekend and will be suspended for the home game against Palace on Saturday. So this leaves us with a dilemma, and a lot of people out there are suggesting that it may well be time for Danny Drinkwater to come into the side. He did travel down to Watford at the weekend, and apparently Dyche is saying that he's there or thereabouts in terms of fitness. So, Richard, I'm going to start with you. Knowing full well that we have to make this change at the weekend, who do you bring in and what formation do you pick?
I still go 4-4-2. I think we look really good playing that at the moment. Listen, I thought Drinkwater was going to be a really good signing, proven top quality Premier League player, but I don't have a clue what fitness he's in, what his headspace is in, so I don't get how anyone can say, all right, I'd start Drinkwater. So for me, I'd like give Hendrick a go in central midfield. I thought he's played well this season when he's played there. Still his best position rather than being on the wing. And then I'd give Brady a start. He's played a bit of football now. He started for Ireland in the game against New Zealand. So I'd keep McNeil on the left, but Hendrick in the middle and then Brady on the right. So that's what I would do. And then, get Drinkwater on the bench, possibly get minutes if we need him.
Yeah, that certainly sounds like it. That's more of a plausible option. I just can't see any scenario where he starts Drinkwater. I just can't see Dyche doing it. I think he's more than likely to play the players who he knows well and can trust. I suspect we might see him as a substitute at some point. This seems to be a very good opportunity to introduce some game time for him. But I just can't see him starting. Tom, what's your views on this? I'm going to assume that you share our opinion that he probably won't start. I think it seems obvious that we're going to put Hendrick in the middle. So do you stick with Brady on the right, or do you maybe put Lennon on instead?
I wouldn't mind seeing Lennon get a run out myself. I think the problem if you put Brady in is then you've got 2 left footers, McNeil and Brady, and one of them's going to have to play on the wrong wing. I don't think you want to take McNeil out of his preferred position because he's got that link with Taylor, and obviously it's his shirt to lose. So I don't know how much you'll get out of Brady on the right hand side, to be honest. I mean, I think he's a better player probably overall than Lennon, and I think that probably is who Dyche will pick. But I think I'd have Lennon in there, a bit of balance, a bit more pace on that side as well. Maybe something important if you need someone to track back and keep tabs on Zaha as well. And I do think Lennon's kind of quite underrated in terms of his work rate. I think he does get back and double up on the winger. And I think he does it better than Brady. So, yeah, I think for me, I'd probably have Lennon in on the right, at least for the first hour, and see how we're going from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would prefer Brady over Lennon. I just think when they've come off the bench, I think Lennon's... I think Brady's been less of an impact than Lennon has. I think Lennon's done quite well when he's come on. So I think I would prefer Brady to start. Do you think this... At any point in the game, given that this is a forced change, do you see Dyche pulling out this 4-3-3 again and putting Jay on? Or do you just think that's just not going to be an option?
I don't think he'll start with a 4-3-3. I think, just because of one player not playing, are you going to then all of a sudden change the whole team around, the whole dynamic? So I don't see that. I think Tom's got a plausible argument for Lennon in terms of he's on his foot, but I just don't really rate him. He's got a lot of pace, but he'd rather just pass the ball backwards. He never even uses that pace and runs at the fullback. And I think Brady's looked good when he's come on. And I think wingers nowadays, they can play against the foot. I think Brady coming in trying to get a shot off, whipping the ball in on that left foot. He's not blessed with pace anyway. So I don't. So it depend. Even if he's on the left, I don't think he's one of them who's going to try and beat his winger and get to the bar line. So yeah, that, like I said, that's what I would do. I wouldn't go around going 4-3-3 from the start or playing Drinkwater. He might not be fit. So yeah, I'm sticking with Hendrick in the middle and Brady out wide.
Yeah, I like it. It gets the Bromley seal of approval. Okay, well, before we actually leave this week's episode, we do need to bear in mind that straight after the Palace game, we've got City at home on Tuesday. It has been a while since we had a Saturday-Tuesday game, and you can tell it's coming up to Christmas time where the games are thick and fast. Well, obviously, we're going to assume that Westwood will be back in. I think it's pretty much a given that we'll be back in for the City game. Do you think that Dyche will try and mix it up a bit, Tom, with having 2 games back to back? I know in previous seasons we've been quite used to this because we're fresh from the Championship and it's something we're used to. But as the years, I know it sounds bizarre, but as the years go on in Premier League football, we do get more and more used to the number of games in the Premier League and maybe aren't as savvy at playing 2 games a week as we were when we were back in the Championship. So do you think now that he's got some of the squad players to do it, that Dyche will be tempted to change the team around, or do you fully expect to see, with the exception of Westwood, the same team play both?
I think the words change things around a bit and Dyche don't usually go together. So I can't see us making a massive amount of changes. And if you go through the team and look what you'd swap, you're not going to swap the centre halves, you're not going to swap the keeper. McNeil's nailed on place. The midfield, you haven't got a lot of options to change things, so I think he'll have Westwood back in for that one. Out wide, it'll be Hendrick, I should think. I suppose the only place that you really see him chop and change a lot is the fullbacks. I know, like for example, last season he brought Barsley back in for the Liverpool game. I think that was to give us a bit more solidity, but then Barsley's in the team now anyway, and he's playing well, so he's not going to get dropped. And I can't see him changing the shape. I think he'll want to have a go at them at home. I think he'll think if Barnes and Wood up front is probably our best chance of having an outball, is probably our best chance of doing any damage to them. So no, I'd be very surprised to see a different team to the one that played Watford against Man City. Obviously, Westwood's going to be a force changer on Saturday, but I think Westwood will be back in and Hendrick will be back on the right, and it'll be that same lineup. And to be fair, we're playing well, so I don't think there's any massive reason to change it around. I think we'll be all right for one Tuesday game.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Okay, Richard, we'll finish on you. We've got 2 home games coming up in the space of a week, Palace and Manchester City. Stick your neck on the line and tell us how many points you think we're going to get.
Well, I think the two tough games. Palace always do seem to cause us real problems at Turf Moor, but we're playing well. I think they've only got 1 point from 5, even though they've had some tough games. I'm going to say we'll beat Palace. I'd love us to beat City. Turf Moor, under lights. There's no better games. I love the midweek games at Burnley. So I'd love us to turn it over, but we're just not very good against the big teams. So I'm going to say, my head says, my heart says that we'll get something against City, but I just really don't think we will. So I'm going to say we'll get 3 points from the next 2 home games.
Oh, well, that's good. 3 points is better than no points. So we'll take your 3 points, Richard, and we'll run with that. Well, that is all we have time for this week. And we have got a lovely 3 points that we've been able to analyse, putting Burnley in 7th place in the Premier League, which is just fantastic. At 18 points, we've got double the points that we had at Boxing Day last year. So it's certainly been a fantastic first half to the season. My thanks as ever go to Richard and Tom for joining me in the studio this week and analysing that fantastic game. These are guys who give up the time for nothing just to produce a podcast with us, and it's very much appreciated. Thanks as ever to producer Matt for knitting all of this together and getting it out there on the airwaves so that you can listen to it all. Thanks, Matt. Thanks to band Joyce for providing us with our music, and thanks as ever to you, the listener, for downloading and listening. We would not be here without you, and your support is very much appreciated. Next week's schedule is yet unknown, given that we've got the Saturday and the Tuesday game. We may look to do a bumper edition on Wednesday. We might do 2 short ones, but we will let you know. But either way, we will be back this time next week. I have been Natalie Bromley. This has been the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.